after fighting so hard to defeat the evils that plague Terraria. The once hero, left hollow and broken by his exploits, is confronted by an opportunity from an unlikely benefactor that may mean everlasting salvation for his world. To refuse would mean certain damnation for all, but acceptance would force him into a quest he may no longer be fit for. To bring eternal peace to the home he loved, though, one final quest he may not return from was a small price to pay. Gods had begun. Humanity had all players deep and challenging, with different is less likely to get me horribly Faced with the offer from the Stardust Weavers, the once hero saw no way he could possibly refuse. They would craft a being that would one day go on to defeat every enemy of Terraria, ensuring a safe future for all. But of course there was a catch. No mortal being, regardless of their might, could hope to face down mythical beasts, celestial beings, and even deities without tasting the sting of death at least once. There had to be a guarantee that this new champion would continue fighting, that death would be a minor convenience at most. It was hardly a simple requirement, for even the Weavers, with all their cosmic majesty, capable of creating life from nothing, could not rekindle the spark once it had been snuffed out. There was only one thing that could do what they needed, a myth that was believed only by the feeble-minded, a font that was said to contain the elixir of immortality, the blood of the makers themselves, and ambrosia for everlasting life. The myths, though, warned that the font had been hidden away, and that no one without an enlightened touch should ever uncover it, lest they bring down a curse upon the entire world. Despite the warnings, the Weavers had already convinced the hero that it was the only course of action, and that a curse would be the least of their worries when the Moon Lord arrived. And so it was. Donning his armor one last time, the once hero of Terraria set out into the world to find what even he believed to be nothing more than a legend. Knowing not where to even begin looking, he investigated the old tales of the font, from adventurers and crackpots alike. The investigation took him far and wide, from the dungeon where his old friends still remained, to the far-flung city of steampunkers, and even the shores of the Goblin Isles. Stories told of how the font was the last remaining reservoir of the primordial slime life had first emerged from, how it had been the basis for the first healing and restoration potions, and how even to this day, the essence of the pool still seeps up through the crags of solid rock to manifest itself as life crystals and influence the growth of life fruit in the jungle. Even though the tales he had heard hinted at the font being hidden deep underground, none spoke of exactly where. Continuing his travels in an attempt to learn more, it was not until he traversed the frozen wastes that the hero was able to uncover more about the legendary font. Here the locals seemed to live an unusual length of time, with many of the tribe's people he spoke to in excess of 100 years old, but not looking a day over middle-aged. Something told him that he was close, and upon digging deeper into the natives' local legends, he found that their traditions mentioned a shrine of hearts buried deep within the ice cap they lived upon. In the past, pilgrimages to the shrine had been a regular occurrence, with those returning appearing physically revitalized. In recent times, the shifting ice had made the journey much more treacherous though, and many had abandoned the journey, feeling it signaled that their time to pass on had come. And so the shrine had begun to slip into legend even among their own people, almost as though it wanted to be forgotten about. But the hero had not come all this way, gotten this close just to be stopped by a dangerous path, and so he implored the locals to show him the way, but they all refused. Even when he explained that the world itself hung in the balance, they simply replied that they would accept what was fated for them. The hero, though, could not accept their decision, and one night he managed to steal an ancient text that showed the way to the shrine. Immediately he set off, knowing the ramifications would be severe if he stayed, and didn't even try to justify his actions to himself. He knew what he had done was wrong, but so too did he know what would happen if he failed to complete his quest. The journey to the shrine was indeed treacherous, with formations of ice constantly moving, blocking passages and threatening to crush him, but he had to continue until he finally broke through an ice sheet into the shrine itself. The text had mentioned that the cavern was vaguely heart-shaped, and so it was, with the font itself pooled into the center, ice blocks holding life crystals floating above it. Without hesitation, the once hero waded into the icy pool and filled the jar with its contents. In that moment though, something changed. The pool became warm and began to steam, the vapors escaping through the passage he had traversed. Not waiting to experience any repercussions, he sealed the jar and quickly left, believing his quest complete. Unfortunately, in his haste to get to the shrine, the entirety of the tribe's ancient text had not been read, for if it had been, he would have learnt that the locals only ever took what the shrine provided in the form of the crystals, and secretions used for healing potions. It warned that only the immortal may enter the pool, for if anyone else were to do so, a curse would befall the world, just as the myths had suggested. The myth stated that if mortals wanted everlasting life so much as to violate the sanctity of the pool, then it would be granted to all, not just those who lived, but those who had lived. Knowing none of this, he who could no longer be considered a hero returned to the Weavers, and they used the shrine's essence, along with their own power, to create the person who would become the champion of Terraria. Renouncing his title of hero, the champion's guide would remain by his side, not speaking of what they knew, lest it break the champion's mind. He couldn't tell them of the deeds he had committed, of what the Weavers had shown him, and instead chose to remain silent, the memories and guilt consuming him forevermore. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did and want to support the channel, then please consider subscribing and hit that bell so that YouTube might possibly inform you when a new video comes out. If you want to go that bit further, please feel free to support the channel on Patreon or go and buy some merchandise on Spreadshirt and Teespring. Links are all down in the description. Other than that, have a great day and I'll see you next time.